I hope everyone is back. I cannot see it, but I suggest we will go on now, because else we are running quite out of time, and people would like to take their lunch or maybe have other appointments. So I would like to give the word to Andy Lane of Open University, and Andy will present the online course that we have developed based on our learnings and our concepts in the project with our 6 living labs. So Andy, are you there? Yes, I see you. Please take over it and lead us through the course.
Okay, thank you, Herman, and good morning to everybody. So you can see on this front screen, we've got a screenshot, well, front slide got a screenshot of the course. Mark, if we can move on to the next slide. Now, it was always the case that we had, as a deliverable for AgriLink, that we produce pedagogical materials. It's realised in what we were trying to do with living labs and things like that, that we wanted to be able to capture something about the processes and everything we're doing around the living labs. And we want to do that in a way, not just with the traditional reports and other things, and there is a long report, say, on the monitoring evaluation, which Kevin has written on the living labs, and there are other publications and things which are coming out of AgriLink around the living labs. But we thought we want to have some pedagogical materials which we aimed particularly at professional practitioners. So we're trying to take and capture something of what we're doing and provide the material in a way that people can learn from and hopefully be able to apply themselves. So that was one of the things which we set out to do from the start, and we ended up doing an online course. But more than just an online course, what we've got here is a collection of educational resources that can be reused and adapted for classroom or field-based learning as well. So I'll just go on to explain that. If I can have the next slide, please, Mark. So how did we develop this course? As I said, it was always a plan to have some pedagogical materials, but as we were going through the processes of running the living labs, of helping to train the monitors and facilitators, and doing the monitoring and evaluation, we were also going through a process of saying, who should we be aiming this for? Who's the target audience? And to go through a learning design process about how we could capture those participatory processes to design a course and educational resources that could hopefully be useful to others. So for a lot of this, we knew that much of the content, or a lot of the subject matter, some of the things that have been discussed by Kevin and Jorieke, we knew this would be coming out of all the working documents and other outputs and things which we're doing. We wanted to be able to put this together in a particular way which we hope will be most useful to most people. And of course, in this case, we're able to happily be able to draw upon the expertise that we have at the Open University in the sort of design and development of open online and distance educational materials. And so we'll be able to use one of our own platforms, websites, OpenLearn Create, to do that. Currently, the course to show you is in English, but there is a version in French being worked on. It'd be nice to be able to do more language versions, but we haven't had the time or budget to be able to do that. But it may be something that others can do. As I say, I'll be able to explain. The materials can be taken away and people could translate it into other languages. Next slide, please, Mark. So this is the platform on which the course resides. It's called OpenLearn Create. I've put a link to the course in the chat if you wish to go and look at it yourself. I'm not showing the live site now, I'm just going to show some screenshots. But this is a sister platform to one which OpenLearn, which the Open University puts a lot of its own content out as free courses. But this is one in which it's possible to have projects, communities, individuals can create and publish their own courses on there. If we go on to the next slide, please, Mark. So again, this is the front page of the course. It's about creating innovative agricultural advisory services through a living lab. There's many features of it I just want to highlight. I think Herman had mentioned earlier, surrounded in the sort of green box there, this course is, we're estimating to be about 10 hours study, but it is for an advanced level. So we're assuming learners have a first degree and significant agricultural experience, because it is advisors, researchers in this area who are our main target audience. Obviously the study time will vary between learners, but 10 hours is the sort of average estimate for that. Next slide, please, Mark. So I said we went through many learning design processes. One of this is to develop some learner profiles. Who do we think this is going to be for? This is just an example of one. We had several we created to understand who it is we might be aiming for. So again, this is just a sort of design process, just as we're trying to develop and use design thinking, design processes in the AgriLink Living Lab itself. We're also using design processes for the designing the course. Next slide, please, Mark. So again, this is back to the screenshot of the front page. So something else I just want to highlight, I haven't mentioned yet. So any browsing user can look at this course. You can go to the website, you can look through materials. However, there are some interactive elements to the course which you'll only benefit if you register on the site. Now, one of these is in terms of being able to create a profile and then also be able to download or print an activity record, as it says in the green box outline there, and to be able to do interactive activities and to get the fullest experience, and also to be able to keep notes. There are reflective activities in which, through the course, in which you can keep your notes, and that's a personal record. And also, as you see at the top there, there's if you do the test I'll talk about in a minute, you can do get a free statement of participation on completion. So fullest learning experience is from registering on the platform and studying it online. But as I said, there's also other things you can download. So on the next slide, please, Mark. So we've got this facility on OpenLearn Create that when you create a course, it can be downloaded in many different formats. You can get the online interactive one, but there are many other options for being able to study or reuse the content. Next slide, please, Mark. This sets them all out. Now, many of these are technical formats and things, but some of them, like an e-book or an interactive e-book or a Kindle e-book, are ones you might be familiar with. And some of these can be useful, but they may not have all the interactive functions in them. But the other thing about this, for people who do have the technical capabilities, all these materials are under a Creative Commons license. So that means it's possible for you to be able to download and adapt them. That's what the Creative Commons license do. It's on a non-commercial and share-alike basis. So again, you have to attribute that the original materials were developed by AgriLink, that you cannot use it for sort of commercial purposes. That's just sell the course. That doesn't mean you can't ask people to pay for tuition support around the course, but you couldn't just sort of say do a print version of it and sell it to them. That would be against the license. But you could offer additional services, so you could do tuition around it. But equally, the share alike is that if you create a new version of it, we'd like you to republish that as well, so it is available to other people. Next slide, please. So that's the details of how the thing works, but this just sets out what the sort of substance of the course is about, in terms of 8 sessions, each with an introductory video. I said there's various graphics and reflective activities where learners can record their notes. But you can see many of the things there are the topics which have already been discussed before. We talk about the AgriLink approach, about what living labs are, around design thinking, systems thinking, what we use from that, the facilitation, the monitoring, evaluation, and the do's and don'ts all come out about the conditions and things like that. So all of that is covering the type of material we've already talked about. Next slide, please, Mark. We also have these 2 reference works as PDFs. These are about tools, about how to use some of the tools we used in Living Labs, but also a trainer's handbook about how to teach. So if you wish to teach and take the material away and use it for other purposes, you can do so. Next slide, please. And this is just a screenshot showing the front page of these 2 PDFs. Next slide, please, Mark. So the toolbox covers the sort of main sort of processes, tools we used in AgriLink, about dealing with stakeholders, stakeholder analysis and engagement, facilitation, it's already been talked about a lot, peer-to-peer mentoring, it's the subject of the next session where we'll actually try doing that for real. Also representing your situation with diagrams and role play. These are all techniques we used both with the monitors and facilitators, but they also could then use with the participants in their living labs. Next slide, please, Mark. But then the trainer's handbook covers how to use the education resources if you wish to use them as a basis for face-to-face classroom teaching, for a short residential course, for more blended or distance learning, or through independent group study. So it's giving ideas of how the materials can be taken and used in other settings other than just you as an individual studying the course online. Next slide, please, Mark. I mentioned that there is a course reward, that if you do it as online study, and there is a quiz, and if you successfully complete the quiz, you've got more than one attempt to do so, then you get a free statement of participation. So it is a way to sort of test yourself. It certainly helps to test some of the knowledge and understanding of what we've done in Living Lab, but obviously it doesn't really sort of cover the sort of skills, how skillful you are at doing that. But also, we hope that through the reflective activities and keeping notes and having a record of that, anybody doing this will understand better what is required in terms of being able to run a living lab. Next slide, please. That's enough for me in terms of talking about the course. I say I've put in the chat, anytime you can go and follow that link and look at the course and other things, but I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have on the course itself. I can already see that what Sylvain has put in, is it allowed to download the course and reuse some or all the materials to include in own training? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
As I said, the non-commercial aspect of the Creative Commons license means there's always confusion around this, but basically it means that you cannot sell the asset as itself. So it's like if you download the PDF, you can't sell the PDF. But if you wish to run say of the Toolbox, but if you wish to run a training session where you give everybody a free copy of the Toolbox, but you charge people for that training course for the tuition, that's perfectly okay.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Are there other questions, suggestions? Yeah, maybe.
Herman, can I ask a question to Andy? Which might, Andy, I mean, you said this is for professional providers, professional people in capacity. What kind of skills do you think these people will already have? That, what will this course be giving them that's new, perhaps? I mean, can you give us some insight into that?
Well, I think as I said at the beginning, we're assuming that people have a fair degree of agricultural experience in some form as a researcher, advisor, or similar. They know something about what it is to provide advisory services for farmers. So we assume that they have that type of knowledge, but what we're probably the main thing we're trying to do, as with the whole of the Living Labs, is to talk about the participatory processes. So what this should help develop is the understanding of an ability to use more participatory processes where you're not just doing one-to-one advice one to just one or two, but how you may do that with a wider group of people. It might be a wider group of farmers, but also a wider group of stakeholders. So it is about how to help and facilitate that type of collaborative or cooperative working in some form. Now, we focused very specifically on how that's done within the whole features of a living lab, but as you explained in the earlier session, a living lab is not suitable for all cases, but even for more straightforward technical advice, there could be a lot of benefits from understanding how some of these facilitative processes, group processes, could be used to help to advise farmers. I mean, I'd be interested to know is how many advisors would ever use a role play, for instance, to help farmers think about what it is they need to do.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or maybe suggestions what we should do to increase the use or availability of the course? Or, not availability, but dissemination? No? Okay, then I think it's all crystal clear, Andy, and I really like to thank you. And I hope the participants of today will find time to check the link that's in the chat. And yeah, I think it's a very comprehensive way to have in a short time frame a really good idea about living labs. Okay, Kevin, then I suggest we close this sub-session and we go to the next one. This is about peer-to-peer learning, and it is prepared by Melanie van Raaij and Egil Stræte. In the start, I mentioned that the advisor involved in this lab her name was Astrid Jacobsen, but that was a mistake. Sorry, Astrid, for it. It's Astrid Johansen from Norway. So Melanie, can I give you the word? I think you are the first one.
Yes, Herman. Good morning, everyone, or maybe already good afternoon. Welcome to this peer-to-peer mentoring session. As Herman already said, this is a bit of an experiment also for us. We did this peer-to-peer mentoring a lot within the living labs, but we never did it in front of such a large audience. We never did it online, and we never did it in such a short time. So be patient with us. What is peer-to-peer mentoring? Mark, you can move to the next slide, please. As living labs are not always sunshine sailing, the facilitators in the lab sometimes encountered bottlenecks, problems that prevented them or hindered them in moving forward in the living labs. And therefore, we organize sessions, peer-to-peer mentoring sessions, where the facilitators of the living labs could get advice from the other facilitators from the other labs in a very fast and structured way, so that they could see their problem from a different angle and get advice quickly and find solutions how to remove the blockage or the bottleneck and move forward in the living lab with the farmers. So we are particularly enthusiastic about this tool because it gives you a better understanding of your problem or a new angle to your problem that you didn't see before. So it makes you reflect on your own thinking and acting, and also getting these different perspectives from different peers and looking at your problem through the eyes of others makes you more professional in your way of tackling these obstacles. You can do the next slide, Mark. So what do the previous one, thank you. So what do we need to do peer-to-peer mentoring? Well, you need a problem owner. We did it among the facilitators of the project of the Living Labs, but we think that this method, this tool, could be very useful for farmer advisors to remove blockages or to move forward in their work with the farmers. And so this problem owner, this advisor, could present his or her problem to a panel of peers, colleagues or others. Not too large a group, not too small a group, maybe more or less 5 people. What you also need is a facilitator, because it's very important to look at the questions that are asked. We will come to that in a bit. The questions that are asked should allow to give a better understanding of the issue of the problem owner. So the quality of the questions is important. And also we always set this time limit so that we could get advice quickly. And I also think we are more creative when we are under time pressure. Well, now we are under a lot of pressure, so we'll try to do it today in 20 minutes. In the Living Labs, we used about 35 minutes. So how does this peer-to-peer mentoring work? Marta, yes, thank you. So we have this farmer advisor who will present his or her problem to a panel of peers. He'll take some minutes to elaborate about his issue, give some context. And then this panel is trying to understand the problem better by asking open questions. So why, how, what, where, when. We take some time for this. And because the problem owner is answering these questions, he might, in the meantime, get a different view, different perspective on his own issue. So after these questions and answers have been given, the problem owner can, if he wants to, reformulate his problem. Also very wise to note this down, because it goes very fast and otherwise he might forget. To reformulate his problem. And then this panel of peers, each one gives one advice. And it's like, if I were you, then I would blah, blah, blah. This takes some time. And then at the end of the session, the problem owner mentions what he can use from the advices given. He says, okay, I will take away this or that. Mark, you can go to the next slide. So we are about to start our experiments. We have found a problem owner. So as Herman said, it's Astrid Johansen. She's from Norway. She works as a farmer advisor, and she will present her issue, her challenge, in a minute. We have found a panel in the role of peers. So this will be Kevin, Andy, Herman, and Jorieke that you've seen before. They will ask the questions and give the advice. I will keep an eye on the time and on the quality of the questions. I will do this so in 20 minutes, and you can, in the audience, you can all participate. So we will also copy the problem of Astrid in the chat. And then maybe you can wait until the panel has asked open questions so that we all have a better understanding of the problem. But then you can write your advice to Astrid in the chat. And it would be very nice if at the end of the session, Astrid has a very large list of advices that she can check. We won't have time to mention all your advices in the session, but Egil will keep an eye on the chat, and if we have time, mention some advices in the session. The whole chat will be saved, so Astrid will get a list of all the advices afterwards. And then I would say, okay, Astrid, the floor is yours. Mark, can you also in Andy and Kevin and Egil, please?
Yep. I just need them to turn their cameras on.
Yeah.
Oh, and Andy as well. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. You have already presented me, so I don't need to say anything more about that. But now the problem owner of Europe feeling like, my problem is that I have a service that I want to offer for payment to local farmers, but they are not too eager or not too interested to buy this service from me. And a little bit more about the service. It's a carbon print accountancy on farm level, followed by a plan of actions for how to reduce climate gas emissions at the farm. A little bit more about the background would be good for you to know. The Norwegian agricultural sector has collectively made an agreement with the Norwegian government. And this agreement includes a plan for how to reduce climate gas emissions and to increase carbon capture within 2030. The plan includes 8 targets areas, out of which a development and use of a climate calculator at farm level is the first target. This calculator aims to be a remedy for identifying and the hotspots and triggering and document effects of actions at each farm. And according to the plan, all farmers are supposed to have taken this calculator in use within 2025. That's in 3 years. The tool has been developed and launched for most of the agricultural production systems, but quite a few number of farmers have signed in yet. A number of advisors like me have during the last years been trained as climate advisors and been able to guide the farmers how to use the calculator and the interpretation of the outcome, and last but not least, identify actual actions. So, but there is one problem, I think. There are no consequences for the farmers not taking this calculator in use. But we are now in a hurry, because if everyone's going to have this fixed within 2025, they really have to sign in now. So my request to you to help me is how do I act to convince the farmer that a climate plan and a plan of action will be used for her. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Astrid. I think this was quite clear. So we will start with Kevin to ask a question, then Herman, then Jorieke, then Andy, and we'll see how far we get.
Great, thanks, Astrid. It's always easiest going first. So my question is about you mentioned the climate calculator, and there are 8 target areas. So what I'd like to know more about is, what are those other 8 target areas and how do they relate to the climate calculator?
At the moment, I don't remember all the other 7 targets actually, but it includes, for example, more precision agricultural practice, introduction of non-fossil machinery, tractors, and so on. Yeah. Okay,
thanks. Let's move on, Melanie.
Herman, you?
Okay, Astrid, you have a service, and in fact, farmers are not interested. So my question is, what could be what's the added value for them? And so what's in it for them?
I think there are quite many added values actually, because a lot of the actions that they often have to make are often connected with better agronomy, and then they will have higher yields and better economy. So that might be added values, and they will have a broad survey of their farming system and their own farm that could help them to spot out different areas that need to be improved.
Okay, Jorieke.
Sounds, Jorieke.
Not learning. I need another year of lockdown, I think, for learning this. Thank you, Astrid, for sharing your problem. I think it's an important problem for the challenge we are in the world, or in the advisory services. My question is, how was the calculator developed and who was involved? What's a bit the background of the calculator?
Yeah, it's common or a collective business where a lot of Norwegian agricultural organizations have founded the development, and there are people at from the university and so on who have put everything together. Development of this calculator. Yeah.
Okay, Andy.
Astrid, do the climate advisors work with the farmers one-to-one, or do they work with groups at a time?
Actually, we offer both alternatives. One single farmer can buy our time to help him, but they can also get into groups for having this more discussion between each other. Yeah.
I think we have time for some more questions. Kevin, do you have a second question? Sorry, Kevin, do you have a second question?
Yes, I do. The farmers that you've been speaking with, have you been engaging with, for want of a better phrase, the farmer families or the wider group of people on the farm, or is it just talking to one representative of that farm?
I think in Norway it's often only one single, the farmer and his wife, or the farmer, the woman farmer and her husband. So yeah, but often, or those I have spoken with, it has often been both man and wife.
Thank you.
Herman, I think we have still some time. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's all. I got some inspiration from a question in the chat, but that's you just mentioned to me that there are some interesting practices that farmers can improve their business, their farm. And so, for these elements that you have of these practices, is there, let's say, some evidence? Are there, call it front-runner farmers who are doing this, or is there? Yeah, is it a proven practice?
Some of them are proven by experiments or science, like it's better to use, yeah, it could go on like, it could be according to the way of spreading manure, for example. That's quite convincible data on. But others might not be that convincible, I think. Yeah.
Jorieke, we have time for one more question.
I had a question. I understood there are some farmers who do use the calculator. What are their experiences, and why? Do you know how they are different from the ones who are not interested? Do you understand how this works?
I think many of those who have used the calculator are a bit kind of disappointed because they don't. They find it quite difficult to understand. This is a new way of thinking for them, like this CO2 equivalence and so on. It's not what they learn in school, and also they think some of it is difficult to get into and understand, I think, and find it a bit confusing as well. And of course, the calculator is still premature, so there are some errors and omissions in it.
Thank you.
Okay, and if you have a very quick question, then we can do yours as last one.
I think following on from what you've just said, it sounds like the farmers are having difficulty understanding the concepts required around the climate calculator. But do they also have issues with sort of digital skills of being able to do things online?
I'm not quite sure if I got your last part of the question, so could you just repeat it?
Do the farmers have issues with working with online calculators?
Yeah, part of, but I think that's not the main problem, because all the data who is going into this calculator are online, so they can, it goes in automatically actually, so they just have to sign in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have to stop with the questions. Astrid, based on the replies that you gave to the questions, is there something that you want to change about how you present your problem, or will you stick to the initial question?
It would have been nice if I could or saw clear ways of that I could change my problem or aspect, but at the moment I don't actually. I think it's, yeah.
That's
I stick
fine.
with the original.
Okay, good. Then we can go to the advice part. Sorry. So we'll do the same order. Herman can start with giving, Kevin will start with giving an advice. Kevin, what would you do if you were Astrid? And please, audience, put all your advices in the chat so that we can all help Astrid move forward in her work. Kevin, go ahead.
Thanks, Melanie. In the chat, there are some good suggestions or some good open questions. So please, I think it's important that you engage with that at some point, Astrid. My advice would be, I think I'd want to situate this climate calculator in the broader context of these 8 target areas and trying to understand how these 8 target areas relate to what's happening on the farms. So you're not just focusing on the carbon calculator, you're seeing all of these 8 target areas, and I'm trying to engage with the farmer about how all of these different things relate to their farming practices and the economy of their farm, so that the real economic benefit to them is communicated effectively. So I would move away from the climate calculator. It's just one part of what is part of the farming process, and these 8 other areas seem to be important, and I would want to hear more about them and to understand those better.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Herman.
Yeah, okay. So what I learned from you is that the climate problem is not a trigger event for the Norwegian farmers. Yeah, so this is. But I'm sure that they are interested in improving soil quality and improving dairy management, and in one of the practices that you have in your toolbox. So I suggest to turn it around, just not to start with this climate calendar and then suggest an actions, but do it the other way. So start with a farmers networks who are interested in those specific actions, focus on the added value for the farmers and work with them on it. And at the end, you can calculate the positive effect for the climate. And that's a sort of extra bonus after it. And then I'm sure they are interested at that time. But in the beginning, you should start with their added value.
Thank you, Herman. Jorieke, what would you do if you were Astrid?
Maybe a bit obvious, but I think the tool for me, coming from a living lab perspective, I think if I hear how the tool was developed, how the calculator was developed, maybe it is good to involve a bit more farmers in redesigning the tool so it's better use for so there's a gap to bridge between the purpose of the tool and the reality of the farmers. I think involving some farmers, some interested and some maybe a bit more hesitant farmers in developing, re-evaluating the tool and see how it can be adapted to their practice. I would start there. Maybe it's not your job as an advisor, but maybe the training institute where you had the training where you can involve colleague advisors in this as well. Don't try to solve this by yourself. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Andy, your advice, please.
Okay, Astrid, what I'd advise would be to operate what we call a freemium model. Put on a free event for the farmers and their families about climate change and its impacts on agriculture and what it might mean for agriculture in the future. And having done that and perhaps introduced some of the concepts and raised some of the issues with them, you can then also introduce, well, there is the calculator. If you wish to take this further, having explained in that broader sense, not just to say to the farmers, but to the farmer's family and things like that, and many at the same time, that perhaps they increase their interest in wanting to work through the calculator.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Egil, we are going to you now. What did you find in the chat?
There are many good comments in the chat, and I think Astrid had to have a look at that afterwards and bring it with you, because it's too much to refer all that now. And as Kevin also mentioned, there are also good open questions that maybe you also can reflect a bit more on the problem. But there are advices related to have a look at look for the leading farmers that can be a kind of front runners in a change. And there's also a gender perspective. There's advice to find female farmers that maybe are more open to changes related to climate. It's also about this, if it's possible to share the data related to the calculator. That can be something that can be, let's say, help that it can be easier and make more interest to compare between the farms and the farmers. And I can also mention here, you are not the only one meeting this problem. Also in Germany, they have a similar experience with tools like this. And it's about, as Karin writes, they could achieve higher acceptance with trusted economic advisors who could show there's an economic benefit through a climate check on the farm spot. Then and then there was a rising demand from the farmer's side. So maybe that's a road ahead for you.
Okay.
Okay. I think yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Egil. Good that we could mention some of the advices in the chat. So Astrid, you won't have seen or heard now all advices that were in the chat or all the open questions. So we will give that to you later. But with the advices that you now have received, what can you use? What will you take away?
Oh, hey, well, it was a lot of good advices here, I think. I think, and I have to look at them all later, but one certain advice I will take with me, I think, and partly already have done actually, is to shift the focus from the calculator itself to the added values. That's what we actually are now trying to do. Yeah, that's because we have experienced that engages the farmers, and also putting more farmers into groups willing to share the data is a very nice way of having discussions. Why are your figures like this and my like that, and what could I do to have your figures, and so on. So yeah, that's some of the advices I will take further, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'm glad this was a useful session then. Mark, I think you can restart sharing. Thank you very much, panel, also, and Egil for leading the voice of the audience. So here you have again the overview of the exercise. I think that we have more or less stuck to the time that we had. You can do the next slide, Mark. I don't know, normally we would like to receive your comments, but I'm not sure that we can discuss live questions and comments that you have. So please send us all your reflections about P2P mentoring and how you would use this, and if this is useful for farm advisors or others. Please write your reflections in the chat. And if you would like to know more about this peer-to-peer mentoring tool, please check our practice abstract, which you will find on the website. It's number 77. And there you will find more information and also the image of how you do this, this exercise. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Melanie.
Have a good continuation.
I put the link also in the chat. So thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Astrid, for sharing this this problem, a challenging problem, and others will recognize it in their own country, I'm sure. Then we go to the final session of this this meeting. This is about integrated advice, and Jorieke, Boelie, and Jaroslav will take the lead in it. So, who of you three will start? Jaroslav, I think you will do that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just waiting if I appear on a screen. Can you see me?
No, well, this screen, no.
Ah, now, okay.
Yes, you're there.
Great. So my role is to summarize a little bit what have been said at the first session this morning about the farmers' needs and how they've been met, and especially on let's say, challenges which are stemming from complexity of the situation on farm and advice. So we call it integrated advice, but we've heard several times also holistic, and we could hear even other expressions of that. Next, please, Mark. So, sorry. The first three, let's say, motivations why we have chosen to touch this topic could be called overlooking of complexity when trying to help farmers to make a good decision on a innovation, whether to implement or not. So first would be kind of a reduction of the causes of a problem or topic which should be changed on a farm. The second is more like transferring of, let's say, already working or functioning innovation from elsewhere, but not respecting the local situation, which could be physical or an organizational environment and other things. And and farmer could be faced on unexpected cost, etc. The third could be called directly overlooking on complexity of innovation effects. Like we've heard this morning about targets as a way how to get rid of nematodes on a field, which was innovation some years ago. But some farmers realized they should change the technologies of soil management because of the remnants of targets. So they faced the new investments and other difficulties. Finally, they managed, but still it was a good example of overlooking the other effects of innovation. And the third, I wouldn't call it overlooking complexity, because there are some innovations which you can't overlook the complexity. When farmers come together and say how we can market together, or how we can share working on land and process and sell things, and how we can agree with consumers, what they would like to eat, etc., etc. Kind of collective action is complex enough, and we already heard that one of the reasons farmers have difficulties to come along, that there is not usually available traditional agricultural advice capable to do so. The purpose of this brief presentation is more to open and initiate discussion, because there could be a huge amount of different ideas on how to overcome potential difficulties. Next, please. Mark? Yeah, thanks. So just summarizing, we have a working definition integrated advice which should overcome those things I just mentioned. So, for example, to identify the root causes of the problem, or to be able to recognize the potential negative effects of this innovation, or identify all factors influencing success, effectivity, etc. with the change, and how to successfully navigate the process of high complexity. For example, collective actions could be one of the biggest challenges, where farmers had to agree on new institutions, rules, etc., etc., to be able to carry out them successfully and for a long time. So take it as a just motivation and start, and now we would like to carry out the discussion with you. That's all for the moment.
Jorieke, you're muted again.
There I am again, 3 times. So thank you, Jaroslav. I think there's a general understanding in this group now that integrated advice would be desirable in order to stimulate more sustainable agriculture in different ways. We would now like to open the conversation a bit about what is needed in order to stimulate more integrated advice, or to organize it. Some interesting challenges already came up in the discussion this morning. So now there's more room for this. In order to get our thinking started, we would like to start with 2 Menti questions. So Mark, maybe you can show the Menti. So please go to www.menti.com on your telephone or on your computer if you have 2 screens, and enter the code 32950307. And we start with 2 questions, and then we have the room open for the discussion. So the first question is, I think we go to the first. question. The first question is really about what is keeping us from providing a more integrated advice. What are blockages or what are bottlenecks? Why do we not provide the integrated advice together that we think is needed? So this is a Likert scale. You can give a score from 1 to 5 on these different ideas, different suggestions for what could be reasons for lacking integrated advice. And of course, the last one is other. If you have other ideas that are lacking here, please indicate in the chat so indicate here if you have other, and indicate in the chat what is your reason. Let's see. It's always interesting to see. First knowledge was first, now it's going, doesn't fit the business. The lack of integrated knowledge is deemed most important currently.
Jorieke, we have a total of 91 people in the call, so it may take a little while to get some response.
Yes, that's good. And later on, we will, the most important ones, we will start in the discussion to see how we can improve this situation, what would help. Please take your time to. And also, if you have others. I see Bruno says the Menti doesn't address different publics between the farmers, adopters, non-adopters, droppers. Would the answer be the same? That's a good one to take into the discussion, like if you need for stimulating a more integrated advice for these different audiences, if different things are required. And let's see, there are others and last people who want to vote. They're not running. Yeah. And the ones who have indicated other, please indicate in the chat what are your thoughts on other issues that. I think for now the lack of knowledge and the business models that do not fit integrated advice, together with lack of organizational support, are the three most important ones. There's not so much change the last minutes. I think we take these three. This is not rocket science, but we take these three as coming out as the most important ones. Please. Yeah. I think then we move on to the next one, which is more about what can we do. So we take these three aspects later on into the discussion. We go to the next question, which is more word cloud. How can the provision of integrated advice be stimulated? You can up to 3 responses, but I think it's even possible to apply 3 other responses later on, if I remember well from yesterday how it went. Yeah. There they are coming. It's good. Skilled facilitators. Training. I see a lot which refers to the knowledge part, which was the problem. Policy is showing up now there. You see also the network or exchange between advisors and the it's getting smaller to read. This is interesting. Yeah, in public support, please also specify what kind of public support would be needed, but we can also go into the discussion on that. Please, you can continue to fill in your, as ideas arise, you can continue to fill in your suggestions for how to organize it. I would like now to start a bit the discussion. We said a lack of integrated advice is integrated knowledge is one of the things that's keeping us from providing it. And there's a lot of comments here on training, the kind of training that's needed, but we would like to invite some examples of people who say that how the lack of knowledge is keeping them, what kind of knowledge is lacking, or who would like to share some experiences on this aspect, especially the lack of integrated knowledge. From the perspective of an advisor or advisory organization, who can I give the floor to share some example? Do
you want me to carry on sharing the screen, Jorieke, or should I?
Yes. I think it is good to, just that they're getting too small to read for me, and I'm not sure how others are.
Jorieke, there is a comment in the chat from Tom Kelly about the use of benchmarking farm and demonstration farm. And maybe Tom has some experience from Tigersk or other contact that he could share.
Yes, please. You can.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just a brief comment. I think one of the important ways that we create a more integrated advisory service is through whole farm approaches to advice and the use of benchmarking farms, demonstration farms, where we look at the whole farm and not just at one crop or one particular aspect of the farm. And this may involve more than one advisor, and so a team approach is often required. And it also, I think, bridges the gap by involving researchers, for example, who may also take measurements on those demonstration farms. So lots of experience on this from the Nefertiti project, so I'm not going to say any more, but I think it's something that is very important in the day-to-day operation of an advisory service, to not to forget the connections that you can make through having if you like, a bank or a stockpile of good demonstration farms that advisors can use and can get a message across in terms of the whole farm approach, in terms of structure, ownership structures, etc., right down to basic soil management and other challenges.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, it's really important also to share the experiences of Nefertiti in organizing integrated advice and events on benchmark farms. Do others have similar experiences or different experiences in how to overcome this the knowledge? Because also what Tom is saying, that the combination of inviting also researchers and other advisors to provide the knowledge together. Do others have? Sorry.
Maybe as I was, Jorieke, when looking back at the chat, Ellen Kellerman provided different example of training. Maybe you could take the opportunity to say, Ellen, sorry, Karin, maybe you could take the floor to give us a few examples of how you of this training based on German example or other. Karin, do you have examples to provide?
My idea was, I'm sorry, my idea was that the CIP interventions could be used to offer training for advisors to bring this different ideas together, to have a holistic, more integrated approach to the training, to the advisory services. According also to new policy strategies, because if you would like to address biodiversity or other Green Deal issues as climate, you will have to do something about this. And I think within this organizational structure, you have to address also the whole ecosystem to bring together the different actors if you want to be successful. And a good approach, in my opinion, is also the EIP Agri in the rural development policy, where you have also this integrated approach that there is a farmer, an advisor, and maybe a researcher or a company. So this already brings together the thinking of looking a little bit broader at the problem and at the challenges, and to look for better solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That's really interesting, how you use the CAP, the possibilities that are offered in the CAP in order to provide this training. Maybe we can move, because linked to the discussion we had with Astrid, the problem of how the problem of I'm sorry, of business models, how to finance, how to organize this extra support and training.
Maybe we can give the. Sorry, Jorieke, I did not want to interrupt. Now, on this issue, maybe I think we could give the floor to Ruth Nettle from Australia to have maybe a bit different perspective, because she made different comments on the chat about this this point that may relate to, but also to Astrid's point of how to relate business model in the context of private advice, and maybe having an Australian perspective could be interesting there. So Ruth, if you could, and thanks to stay with us so late for you.
Yes, I was just thinking it's getting a little late here. I might have to head off, but no, it's been very interesting. Thank you. Yes, I put some thoughts in the chat there that in Australia, with it's a mix of public and private systems, but we have issues with where is the next generation of whole farm management consultants coming from, as well as where is the time and payment for private advisors to develop their skills and go into new areas. And so some of the models here are to try and find different ways to support private advisors to develop new knowledge and move into new areas. And that tends to come from a bit of a public-private partnership approach. And so particularly for younger advisors, so that there's not just reliance on the billable hours, it's called, but yeah, there is some sort of industry development support. But I think it's a very important issue. And the other area that we're moving into in Australia is similar to what Tom described, with thinking more about the referral system between advisors and supporting through multi-actors or multi-advisory communities of practice that gives confidence for advisors to refer to others, or to develop coalitions where they support each other. So there's some of the things that are going on in more the privatised area.
It's really interesting. Thank you for. It's really important, I feel, to share the experiences that are in different. Everybody is developing own ways of dealing with this problem. So it's really rich to share the experiences and the practice and what works in different contexts. I was thinking.
Yes, actually. Sorry, I didn't mean to. The peer-to-peer mentoring was very interesting. That's been another model that slightly different, where different activities, say demonstration farms or focus farms, become the site where younger and older or more experienced advisors, sorry, I won't use age, more experienced advisors are mentoring or supporting the development of facilitation skills and other things, but through a live, like a living laboratory, I suppose, but using those that are fundamentally projects or programs for farmers, but it's stacking the support to develop the skills and capability of advisors in whole farm systems advice. So it's a different way of, I suppose, thinking about mentoring, using the reality of the farm program and building capability that way. That was another example. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. I'd see in AgriLink we also had the social technical scenarios workshops, and maybe from there we also have some inspiration, Boelie, or you can maybe link it to some of the comments in the chat to have a little bit. Do you have something to add to enrich the conversation?
Well, one thing that emerged from some of the scenario workshops, at least, is that when I heard Tom Kelly talk, I thought, here's somebody from a rather big advisory organization that has, say, the overall magnitude to have everything on board and to have the generalist and the specialist, etc. But what you always also see is that you have rather small organizations in which individual advisors have the advisors have their own farmers that they work with, and they have their own competence, which is not that broad and not that integrated and what have you. So the problem for these is that how to make the advisory system that has all the competence in principle in itself at the macro scale, how to make it work at the micro scale. So how can an individual advisor and an individual farmer interact with that wider system? And that's a matter of coordination within the whole advisory system. So that what we saw in the micro acres, what we saw yesterday, that farmers usually only have contact with 1 or 2 advisors, etc. And that's a very big barrier for achieving this integrated advice. So this has to be dealt with at the system level. And that's a challenge, I would say, for the advisory system as a whole. How to achieve more coordination within the advisory system so that the farmer can access the strengths of the system rather than the individual advisor. And I think that's where one of the big challenges lies to make this fly.
Thank you, Boelie. So is there anybody who has ideas on how individual farmers can be linked together or has good experiences in how this was done? I think, are there other questions then in the chat?
I'm just scanning the chat. I don't know, maybe we could give the floor to either Sylvain or Susan to say that if in other projects about interactive innovation, they see example or case studies where there is this connection what Boelie referred to, and that may be an answer to Susan's former question about how to support this advice. And what we plead for is maybe not to have. It's not about the number of holistic advisors, but more how to relate actual farmers advisor that farmers work with to a broader system. So do someone as an example? I don't know if Susan or Sylvain want to answer in the discussion again, or someone else.
Sylvain, do you want to?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I was thinking a little bit because so in the project I am coordinating, I2Connect, we work about very much about the training of advisors to facilitate interactive innovation processes within groups, of course. Interactive innovation means that there are groups of people involved. So, but I think maybe it's a little bit different from holistic advice because, yes, it is not specialized on a certain crop or a certain aspect of a farm, but yes, it is about facilitating the identification of solutions to solve problems identified by a group. Yes, so it's similar to the whole. It is a whole farm approach, but it is not an individual advice approach. So I don't know if it is exactly the same subject as the one we are discussing at the moment.
I think it is an approach to organize knowledge coming together from different sources and bringing together different advices and knowledge, maybe in solving problems together with farmers. So I think we need many different approaches to not one silver bullet in this. So thank you for sharing your experiences. I'm not sure. I think time-wise we're almost at the end of this place. Maybe we have one more question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No.
There was one comment by Michel Kugler that relates to one point that we did not touch much in AgriLink, which is about curriculum and education for advisors for the future, and a question of what is the program for young advisors education, not only training but education. I think that's also an open question. I'm not sure we have some clear answer because it was not directly in the scope of the project. But if someone wants to comment on this, I don't know, Michel, if you want to elaborate for briefly, and then maybe we'll have a comment on that.
Yes, perhaps just a short comment. It's a whole professional life. I'm looking for this kind of curricula, and I'm afraid on the level of training of students in the engineering schools, there is a very old traditional fashion of thinking. So holistic approaches are something strange for them. So I think we need to start on this level.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's very important to start from the new entrants as advisors and in the curriculum. I think it is important. We cannot solve the whole problem nor finalize the whole discussion now, but I think it has been, well, really interesting experiences have been shared. And tomorrow we have a session on policy, the role of policy in improving advice and integrated advice. So I think we can continue, I think, to how to solve this problem in order to, in each of the situations, we can develop appropriate approaches. Boelie, do you want to say one final?
Yes, one thing I would like to add is that one of the things, at least, that came up in a couple of the scenario workshops is that that at least some people made a distinction between generalist and specialist in giving farmer advice. And that also relates a bit to Michael's suggestion how engineers work. There you also have the generalist and the specialist. And the big challenge then is how to make the generalists and the specialists work together. And maybe this nicely connects to the previous session. I think it would be very nice because there's all kinds of experience out there of advisory organizations who are doing this and who are trying this at least. So maybe to start a living lab with that kind of experiences and let some of the advisors think about this. How do you organize this in different situations? The cooperation between generalists and specialists.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Boelie. Interesting to combine the living lab approach in this. Then I would like to give the final word to Jaroslav with unmuted.
I'm not sure if it should be the final word, but definitely depends a lot on the type of innovation and the level of complexity, because there have been a lot of comments which some of them related not so much complex situation. I would like to mention again the extreme one when the farmers have to work together for a long time, where there is a huge gap in advice provision. And to solve this, for example, gap, it will call for even a little bit a different solution across the countries because of the different traditions, structures, etc. So I agree with one of the comments. There is not one solution, but I think it's worthwhile to discuss it, because then otherwise we will not move forward. So yeah, very useful discussion. Thanks a lot. Mike.
Yeah, it's thank you, Jaroslav. I think it's really important to keep on sharing these experiences, and also now that AgriLink is coming to an end, but other projects are working in this similar area. So please let us enrich each other's with experiences and find platforms to work together on this. I'd like to give the floor to Herman or Pierre for finalizing.
I think, Pierre, you can finalize it and then maybe say some few words about this afternoon session.
Yes, thank you very much. I will just close briefly this meeting. First of all, I want to thank Herman, Melanie, Kevin, Jorieke. I'm sure I will forget people. So Egil, Andy, everybody who contributed to this session. I think it was a nice display of different types of methods. And you took some risk in organizing a kind of live experiment of the peer-to-peer mentoring. So thanks for all of you, and a special thanks to Astrid, who gave, I think, a very good example about the pitfall about how to integrate environmental issues such as climate change into advice in our current advisory landscape. So I think a big thanks to Astrid, because it was not an easy exercise. What I take for to introduce the session is that we have this big challenge about how to integrate this issue and provide a more global or holistic perspective in an advisory landscape that has been partly privatized in many contexts, and which is much more fragmented than it used to be. And that will be part of our discussion in the policy recommendation tomorrow morning. So I hope that will contribute, and Sylvain and Suzanne will be present at the round table together with our colleague Natalia and also Ingrid. Also, I think we will have an interesting discussion, and especially on the fact that the solution may not be only to look for individuals. I think it's still important about curriculum and training, but also more collective solutions through enhancing the back office of advisory services, and see multi-actor solution platforms, shared demonstration, and so on. So we will have this discussion tomorrow. So that's a bit of a teaser for you to please come back tomorrow for the discussion.